Thank you very much, committee members. So I'm going to call the meeting to order, and I'm going to ask Madam Clerk. I'm not rushing you. Is everything all set up or fired up? Oh, good. Are there any changes to the agenda today?
Yes, we have a withdrawn discussion item, which is the business cafe proposal from the Hamilton Chamber of Commerce and the Planning and Economic Development Department. This item was deferred from May 5th, and in that time, the group decided to go in a different direction with the item, so that I've asked it that withdrawn.
Wonderful. May I have a motion then to approve the agenda as amended by Councillor Ferguson, second by Councillor Partridge. All in favor? Thank you, everyone. Are there any declarations of interest this afternoon? Seeing none. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the May 5th, 2016 meeting? Moved by Councillor Green, second by Councillor Pasuda. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And Transit-Oriented Corridor Zone Bridge Project presentation and update. And I think it's Tim. Tim, good afternoon, Tim. Come on down. Tim will make the presentation today.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me here. So for those who don't know me, my name is Tim, Timothy Lee, and I am one of the planners involved in the commercial and mixed-use zone. Thank you. And also the transit-oriented corridor zone as well. So the reason why I'm here today, I just want to provide everyone with an update and also a brief presentation on these zones and where we've been so far in the process. Oops. All right, so the city is in the process of completing the zoning bylaw 05-200, which came into effect in 2005 and is being implemented in phases. So the current phase right now is to introduce the commercial and mixed-use zones and also the transit-oriented corridor zones as well. So why have staff prepared a set of new draft zones? I think overall it is a good news story. The 05-200 zoning bylaw, if you're not familiar with it, attempts to be easier to read and understand, and it is also a living document which will evolve over time. Furthermore, the proposed zones, which we will get to in a few minutes, will achieve the following. So we have 5 points here. Just want to touch very briefly. So the first is the Urban Hamilton Official Plan. Came into effect in 2013, and the proposed zone will implement the policies found within this official plan, where each zone has been proposed based on the policies of each individual designation. The second is that currently the 6 former municipal zoning bylaw is still used by staff and used today. So the proposed zone will provide a more consistent set of zoning regulations for the urban area. So for example, if you were in Dundas, the set of zoning regulations will be very different from Stony Creek, for example. And this may prove a little bit of a problem when interpreting similar uses in different former municipalities. So the third is that the draft zone will attempt to encourage investment and development opportunities by removing barriers where it may limit what a business owner or a landowner can do. So really the goal here is to really create a more positive business environment and envision over time a more economically diverse Hamilton. We really want to be part of that process. And also this applies to future development opportunities along the LRT corridor as well. So the final is acknowledging emerging trends. So over the past couple of years, we've seen a lot of new businesses opening up in Hamilton. In particular, microbreweries and elements of the arts and culture sector. So these uses for example, microbrewery is being introduced as a permitted, as commercial use under our zoning bylaw, and will be permitted in some of our proposed uses as well, proposed zones as well. So another reason or good news story is under our existing zoning bylaw, as you can see, this is a word cloud. And I'm sure you've seen these everywhere on social media or on the internet. So what we have here is the word retail is the main word. So that is actually a permitted use under the 05200 existing zoning bylaw. All of the words that you see surrounding it are individual permitted use, commercial uses under 6593, which is the Hamilton zoning bylaw. So basically what we're trying to say is that we're combining all of these. Sorry, is there a laser? Okay. Okay, thanks. So all of these words that you see here will make up the word retail. So, for example, pet shop. Oops. So the pet shop, antique store, jewelry store, all of these are individual commercial uses under our Hamilton zoning bylaw 6593. So under 05200, retail is retail. And that will simplify the zoning bylaw quite a bit. It's more broad, it's more flexible, and really simplifies the zoning bylaw quite a bit. If you actually read the Hamilton zoning bylaw 6593, it can be very difficult to read only because it spells out each individual commercial use. And then retail is not the only one. Studio, it's also the same thing. We're going to combine these these uses into the word studio. And personal service is exactly the same thing. So we have tailor shop, furrier, laundry pickup station, shoe repair shop will all be classified as a personal service. And restaurant is another great example where we have unlicensed restaurant, tavern, bars, takeout, refreshment room. Under our new zoning, it'll be just restaurant. So there are several communities that are currently we're leaving out. The reason is either because it's in an existing secondary planning process. So for example, the Centennial Neighborhoods going through a secondary process right now, or it's currently at the OMB and we're basically waiting for further direction on its policies. So Fruit Luminon is another example. So here's the 8 commercial zones and the corresponding designations under the Urban Hamilton official plan. So we're going to go through very briefly all of the zones, starting with the local commercial zone. So when we were doing a review of local commercial zones, we figured that there's many different intensities of local commercial. So what we decided to do was propose 3 local commercial zones based on intensity. So the first is our C1. So these are your mom and pop shops, your small commercial retail establishments, maybe your small professional offices. And you can see that it's compatible with the surrounding residential neighborhood. It could be a converted single detached dwelling. The C2 is our little more intensive commercial development, and you can see this is on Cannon, near Ottawa. And again, it's compatible with the surrounding residential community. And then finally, we have our local commercial C3 zone. These will be your strip plazas and a little more intensive yet commercial zone. Through the chair, it would be what we call C5A, so pedestrian predominant zone. So all of Ottawa Street, where the BIA is located. So to the chair, no. Today's just for information purposes. So.
I just saw it.
Oh.
Thank you for allowing me.
So the next is our district commercial. This provides a broad range of commercial uses intended to serve the immediate neighborhood. So as you can see, this is in Clabson's Corner, Highway 5 and 6, and that one is the Fortinos near McMaster University. So basically these include larger commercial plazas with larger floor size, larger lot area. Residential uses will be permitted in this zone, but the main purpose of this particular zone is for commercial purposes. So the next three are what we call mixed use zones. So we have our C5, which was a mixed use medium. This will be located along like Upper James, the Barton or Parkdale streets and provide a very broad range of commercial and residential uses, which again serves the broader market. So in this particular zone, we will permit standalone residential commercial buildings, such as the one on the left, or you may also have a 3-story commercial building as well. And it is also acknowledged, especially under the Urban Hamilton official plan, that future development will be primarily located along the C5 zone. So the next zone is our pedestrian predominant zone. So this is located in our BIAs. So for example, Ottawa Street, Locke Street, Barton Street, and again provides a broad range of commercial and residential uses. The difference is that there's additional design regulations embedded in the zone in order to provide that positive pedestrian experience, which a lot of these places already have. So we really want to maintain that. Furthermore, there are prohibitions from permitting motor vehicle related uses, so they wouldn't be permitted under this zone. Again, the idea is to really encourage and foster that positive pedestrian experience along these commercial streets. And then we have our mixed use high density zone, which is for the Lime Ridge malls, the Center and Barton. This area provides more opportunities for more intensive commercial development and residential development. So what you can see here is just renderings of what can potentially happen. Because of its large lot area, there's certainly a lot of opportunity to create an amazing community of commercial and residential uses. So finally is the arterial commercial zone. These permit a broad range of commercial uses that require lots of outdoor storage and also parking. So these will include your large furniture stores, your home improvement stores, where a lot of outdoor storage is a requirement. And restaurants and automobile-related uses are also permitted. So now we're going to get to the transit-oriented corridor zones. So these are the three TOC zones that we have, and again, the corresponding designations under our Urban Hamilton official plan. There is an interim control bylaw in place right now and was approved by council in October, I think it was October 27th, I believe, in 2015. And basically, the interim control bylaw was to freeze development along the proposed LRT corridor in order for staff to propose a set of zones for the upcoming LRT corridor. So this is what we have right now. So the TOC 1 is our mixed use zone, and again, it's very similar to our C5. and it provides permits a broad range of commercial and residential uses. And again, the zone is intended to be transit supportive and pedestrian oriented by requiring buildings to be brought close to the street, and also establishing minimum and maximum heights, and also the requirement for rear parking as well. So again, the intent is to really encourage different types of residential and commercial uses to develop along this corridor. So the second is our TOC 2, which is our local commercial zone. This recognizes the need for smaller scale commercial uses that serves the local neighborhood. So this zone does require local commercial uses to occupy the majority of the building. Again, that's the reason for this. It's a local commercial zone, with some residential uses permitted on the upper floors. So we finally have our TOC 3, which is our residential. So along the LRT corridor, there are places where there's existing and stable residential neighborhoods, especially along, I believe, King Street. And the purpose of this zone is to preserve and recognize the existing residential neighborhoods along this corridor. Along this corridor, there's also commercial uses scattered around, and we will be allowing them to continue as an existing use, as a legal non-conforming use, with the acknowledgement that eventually it'll be planned for future residential development. So in all of that, we also have to amend sections of our zoning bylaw 0500 in order to apply to these two zones. So for example, there are changes to our definition section, our parking section, and also our special exceptions and holding provisions section as well. And also of note, special exceptions will be added to our zoning bylaw to recognize those that actually have gone through the approval process. So there's been, of course, numerous zoning bylaw amendments that have gone through by private, from private like consultants or landowners, and we've been recognizing those as well. We've actually done a review of all of the site-specific that has happened over the years.
Excluding the possibility of having some of those storefronts historically immediately converted into residential, sometimes with drains or the flags kind of over the window thing. Are we allowing flexibility in this TOC3 to have that potentially revert back to residential? Commercial. Yeah.
I'll have to look into, to the chair. I will have to look back to the TOC 3 zone, but for other zones, what we've actually introduced is not allowing for residential uses along the street.
Right.
So what we've done was actually embed certain regulations to allow residential to not front or have a habitable route face a street. So and we do acknowledge that there's been a lot of, especially on Martin, I believe.
Well, on King Street as well.
And on King Street as well. So that would not be permitted going forward. They would have to meet certain of the zoning regulations.
And just so that we're clear, you've now given the definition of room facing the street. It's 50% of the floor, is that correct?
To the chair, I believe so, yes.
Because I know, Madam Chair, I bring that up. We're really excited to potentially have a return to walkable communities, small local businesses, small entrepreneurs kind of re-inhabiting along this transit corridor. with the potential hopefully to have some density on top or whatever developments might transpire. But I just, I guess I'm cautious against having restrictions on or amnesty on some of these units that have been converted that should have been commercial. Oftentimes, it is the case they actually clear them vacant, so not paying taxes on them, put up some boards, and I was walking last night with my newborn along King Street. So we put the boards up in the window and look through the door, and sure enough, there's a hallway with doors on either side. And I'm hoping that we're not providing space where that just is going to be the case moving forward.
So, through the chair, I think from a zoning perspective, that would not be permitted under our new commercial zones. Ones that are existing right now, it is what it is, I suppose, but because they would, hopefully, if it would be permitted under the existing zoning.
Okay. As long as, through you, Madam Chair, the staff, everybody's heard my concerns. We're really hoping to see the renewal. We're really hoping to see some of the return, as I said, the small business walkability. And I feel like in some regards, there's been a bit of a blind eye. I can say that even in our last committee adjustment, we had somebody come in, unrelated to the street, mind you, with an exemption or an amendment that had like a 23-foot commercial space in front of the window, and then everything else behind it to be residential. So those are the cautions that I have. I just want to go on record right now saying that at least in these beautiful corridors that you're showing, you see some of the brown bricks and some of the other businesses. Our hope and what we're understanding and what I'm telling my constituents is that the economic uplift along this corridor will hopefully return some of the vibrancy, certainly we don't want to displace people. The bottom slide, you see some houses that look like traditional houses, but then on the corner, probably not originally a traditional house, and now it's been converted over the years, looking like it might have a storefront kind of conversion kind of scenario, which we often see. So I want to make sure that if, and I'm not trying to displace anybody, but if an entrepreneur, a small business person, and this is, I think, a great opportunity in my ward, is that people with a reasonable business model could potentially come in and buy these buildings. And I wouldn't want to see them have to fight a traditional historical use, which was illegal, not legal non-conforming, but illegal blind eye conforming. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, so I just want to go on the record and say right now that we're hopeful that we can see some of those return back to historical commercial uses. And also keeping an eye out for displacement and things that tend to follow that.
So just to respond to that, I'm looking at the draft zones right now. So for example, under our top 3 zone, it says no habitable room shall have access or windows on the ground floor of the building facade. So habitable room would mean like a bedroom, a living room, things like that. And
I appreciate the specificity. One of those two. Thank you, Councillor. What is the total square footage or percentage that defines what's commercial and what's not? Because again, I can put drywall up 10 feet or 5 feet behind the thing and say, oh, this is commercial. I'm selling air, I'm selling space. And then have bedrooms and stuff kind of behind it. So there's no real intended purpose or integrity around the commercial use, you know what I'm saying? Is it a 50% threshold that we have in our planning?
so, believe under our other zones, not necessarily the top 3 zones, there would be, sorry.
That's okay. That's why we're here and that's why you're presenting, because we want to make sure that we're reading from the same book.
Sorry, give me a second here.
You know what, actually, I'll allow, sorry, I don't want to derail you. I'll take my personal questions. I think I've stated the intent and the spirit of where I'm going with what I'd like to see particularly through the corridor, you'll note that not much has happened in that corridor from Mellington to Ottawa Street along King for decades. So I'm very, I'm Johnny Appleseed, St. John the Evangelist out there in my community, trying to really talk about the benefits of LRT, and I'm saying that there can be anticipated development. The adaptive reuse stuff, the historical use stuff, there's still some hiccups for me that some potential developers might come in and be encumbered by an unintended consequence. So those are the things that I'll follow up offline with planners just to make sure that we walk through that corridor and look at examples where that might be the case. I need a clear definitive answer because if I'm cheerleading, I got the top on. I want to make sure I'm cheering for the right people.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. So we can certainly have a one-on-one discussion for sure. And you're absolutely correct. There's different zones and different situations. So, for example, in our C5A, which is a pedestrian predominant zone, it says the following uses, excluding access areas, accessory, office, and utility, should only be permitted above the first story building, which includes dwelling units and mobile dwellings. So
we'll follow up.
Yeah, we'll certainly follow up.
Take a walk on the street.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you. It's not by square footage so much as the levels. So
That's correct, yes.
Yeah, thank you. I had Aaron, and then who's that, right? Yeah, so thank you. Aaron?
I'm assuming, Madam Chair, that the presentation is complete and you're not entertaining further.
No, Councillor Green was asking the question
Really?
just before that he got to this slide, so I allowed that. And I did, if you want to wait till we
I'll
finish,
wait
that
till
would be great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, and thank you very much.
There's not too much left. So the next slide. So in order to also to implement and introduce the new zones, staff will need to introduce official plan amendments to the Urban Hamilton official plan, which will be required for both our commercial zone and also along the LRT corridor. Basically, the amendments are to refine the parent and also secondary plan policies, and also to reflect any of the future development potential, and also to allow those preservation of other areas. So it really is not a wholesale change of this document. It's really to implement the zones as we're introducing. And the reason why we're doing this in steps is because we have a lot of wards to go through, but more importantly, we need to introduce and hold our open houses for the transit-oriented corridor zones. In order to meet the timelines for the interim control bylaw, which will expire in October 2016, we needed to get that process started now, which we have, and we've also piggyback the commercial mixed-use zone at the same time. So from now, it's actually going to split into two processes. The commercial and mixed-use zone, we will have our second phase of our open house, wards 5 to 13 and 15, in the fall of 2016. And Shannon, who is not here today, but she will be bringing forward a recommendation report to Planning Committee and Council in October of 2016 to introduce the top zones and seek recommendations from Council. So these are, if you have any questions, I know we've probably reached out to a number of individuals already, but our contact information is here. There's also a dedicated website for the LRT and also our commercial and mixed use, where the draft zones, some of the display panels that were presented at the open house are also available, and also the draft zones for zone mapping for wards 1 to 4. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. I have Aaron.
I just have a couple of totally different things, Madam Chair, through you. when you move ahead with a rezoning on a property, as a matter of courtesy or requirement, I don't know which, are the affected property owners notified? Let me give you an example. Doesn't attach to anything to the city, but I was talking to someone in Ancaster recently who I informed him I don't have a life, so I read the Greenbelt legislation. And there have been expansions to the Greenbelt in certain parts of Lancaster, and he didn't know that. Now he's delighted for obvious reasons, but he didn't know that. So when you go through this, are any affected property owners officially notified what you're proposing to do with his or her site?
So through the chair, what we've done in order to notify commercial property owners is we've actually produced a postcard. This is for Wards 1 and 4 because we had our statutory open house earlier this month. So what we've done is actually send out a postcard to all of the affected property owners, knowing the project itself, the upcoming statutory open houses, the website, and how they can provide feedback and participate in the process. And in addition, we had also provided, or we had an advertisement in our Hamilton Spectator and also the community newspapers as well. And also through our website, it's in the City of Hamilton's website as well. So what we've done actually, statutory open house, we did a little bit of a poll for all the people who actually attended the statutory open house. We asked them, how did you know about the open house? And most people did see the postcards and also newspaper as well. So it has been pretty effective. And then for those who actually submitted a rezoning application, what we've also done was actually inform our coworkers from development planning, building services, and let them know that we're also doing this project as well.
So just to be clear, you don't send a registered letter to the owner of a property and says, you're currently zoned XYZ and we're going to do this to your property. And you should come to this meeting, or if you've got any questions. If I go to the website, for instance, I look at a property at ABC Main Street, will it show me what the current zoning is and what you're proposing? I'm a little bit troubled, if I may, Chair, that when a private property owner, when there's proposed changes to his or her property, that there be some formalized notification process, because it has all sorts of possibilities, that's the word I'm looking for, consequences or potential consequences. So you do not send formally a registered letter saying to owner A of property B that this is what you're proposing to do.
Through the chair, the only difficulty with that is if we do that, then it kind of makes it a little bit liable because it's an official saying that this is what should be zoned as, and also everything is in draft form. If anything does change, and we've actually had experiences where they would come in with a letter or an email many years ago of that nature, and then they come back and say, well, how come you've changed the zone? And so we have to explain everything's in draft form, things can change, and that's it.
I guess the concern I have, Madam Chair, is that it's human nature being, at least in my experience, observation over the years, human nature being what it isn't until you start talking about a particular property or project that, oh, I didn't know this, nobody told me, well, we did this, and this, but there was no formal notification, and that concerns me. So I'll just put that on the table for what it's worth. I have a supplementary, a short question, I think, because this is for my own edification, because many years ago when I was making observations of a local council, and there was a huge discussion about how many trees should be on the site plan for a new shopping center. And I was, if memory serves me right, that's many years ago, maybe the rules have changed in the meantime, but as I recall, council was told at the time by staff that when it came to site plans, because beauty is always in the eye of the beholder, and may always be what you may like, I may not, and vice versa, there was little that municipal officials could do in terms of approving designs, and you talked about site plans being part of this process during your presentation. The simple question is, does the city, does the municipality, either through its elected officials or through its appointed staff, do they have the right to make changes to submitted site plans?
Through the chair, they would have to submit a site plan amendment. Once they go through a site plan process, they satisfy all the conditions and then they receive final approval. What happens is if they want to change it, they would have to go through a site plan amendment process and kind of almost essentially do the entire process again. And it would be vetted through different departments, whether it's development engineering, urban design, traffic, corridor management, and so on.
Okay, I'll leave it there. The last question I have, Madam Chair, is what I think I heard you say. I'm looking at TOC 3 zone. These pages aren't numbered, but you have this beautiful picture of those 3-story walk-up, I think probably in East Hamilton. Back a couple more. There, that one. Did I understand you correctly that it is going to stay residential and will be future residential? Because if my understanding is correct, the LRT is proposed to go in front of those properties. That's part of this exercise, quite frankly. Does that mean that you're going to preserve that type of building and that density at that site forever?
Through the chair, generally, yes. I mean, the whole purpose of the TOC 3 is to preserve residential and also to permit residential, multiple residential uses. There are, I mean, along the LRT corridor, there are a lot of what we have H zone, which is our commercial zone, but also a lot of residential zones as well. I don't know what zone that particular property is, but we would be preserving as much of the residential as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
And Mr. Mayor, welcome to the I was just going to ask him to clarify, but we're not saying we're locking in on that type of density forever. That can change. I think that's what Aaron's question is. Just because we're saying that's what's allowed there, anything can change. And we would be promoting on the LRT route intensification.
Through the chair, that's correct. I mean, redevelopment can happen.
Okay. Go ahead, Aaron.
Okay, so, beg your indulgence, Madam Chair. Thank you. So, down the road through an application process, somebody could come along and says, I want to tear down those 2 buildings. I want to put up a 40-story residential condo with commercial on the first 2 floors. Is that possible under these proposed changes?
Through the chair, based on that scenario, that wouldn't happen because under the urban habitat official plan, the maximum would be 6 stories anyway. So, they would have to go through a whole bunch of like OPA, rezoning application. If it's up to 22 meters, then...
So now you've raised another flag in my mind. Are you telling me that no condos will be built higher than 6 stories? Is that correct?
Through the chair, yes. I mean, under our urban Hamilton official plan, in particular the mixed-use medium designation, the maximum height is 6 stories.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. George, did you want to just put something else in or no?
Yeah, through the chair, I was just going to add, in this particular zone is what Tim is speaking to. There are other zoning categories along the corridor where the higher density we've permitted. So specifically to the TOC 3 residential zone, that's what Tim's replying to. And there are other areas along the corridor that would be zoned, the designated zone in the bylaw as well as the BOP for the taller buildings. So there's locations along the corridor that vary in terms of the permitted heights.
Thank you. Karen? Okay, Karen?
Yeah, yes, I'm sorry.
Okay. Safa? Thank you. Greg, did I see you? Did I as well? No, hang on. Did you? Okay. Safa?
Yeah, just a question on the presentation of these zones. So, under the Greater Road Commercial Plan, Hamilton is supposed to aim for certain density targets, and there's certain corridors that are supposed to be high. high density than others because they've been designated as such, and that's why we're getting the LRT investment and others. So in that entire jigsaw puzzle, the planning department and city has to figure out, are a lot of these zones, do they come with specific metrics on density targets? Like some of the best practices that we've read are how 500 meters from near an LRT station or 500 meters from along the line, it's supposed to be over 30 dwellings, and then if you go further beyond, it's supposed to be 22 dwellings, and that's supposed to be an ideal city should be aiming for. Of course, it's different for each scenario in each city and what exists currently, but is that being taken into consideration in what's being planned?
To the chair, under Urban Hamilton official code, we don't, for the commercial designation, we don't have any density targets. What we have is a maximum height of 6 stories. In Hamilton, you have to also, it's very different because the lot fabric itself is very small. So even if it is a maximum 6 stories, sometimes we may not be able to accommodate a 6-story building without any land assembly or putting parking in underground. It's just sometimes not feasible. And we've done a review of some of the lot fabric, even just a cursory review. A lot of the properties are very, very small, especially along King Street. So, I mean, yeah.
I guess I'll follow up with staff there and get a better understanding. It's just for us to communicate back to our members, because a lot of discussion has been, LRT is a good investment because the province targets and Hamilton has to meet them, and that iterative process, like I'll follow up later. The other one is the other best practice is seen as some business types are highly compatible with transit-oriented development and for the 3 identified new zones, whereas other businesses might not be as compatible in meeting the goals, and perhaps that's why the interim control bylaw was put in, if I remember the discussion. So not to name names, but things like car washes or hardware stores are seen as compatible. So am I misunderstanding your earlier slide where the word retail was in big numbers, and you mentioned that everything is being rolled up into retail and there's going to be less discrimination between different uses? Or is it that there will still be some less preferred options and other more preferred options in C1 to 7?
Through the chair, there's a lot of questions here to ask. So with respect to, you mentioned car washes on the top one, I guess, along the LRT.
Just as an example.
As an example, so just as that example, motor vehicle-related uses such as car washes, gas bars, motor mechanic shops will not be permitted under our top 1 zone. Again, we want to encourage more transit-supportive uses and being more pedestrian oriented. There are existing uses, for example, the Esso station at King and Thunder. There's a bunch of other related uses. In some cases, we've introduced a special exception only because they've gone through a rezoning process and to recognize those particular properties. So.
Graham.
I just had I have a few questions, but let's start with the parking requirements. I think reading it over, it looks like the parking requirements for all the new zones are exactly the same. Is there no consideration of, for the top zones, that there might be different requirements or that less demand for car parking?
Through to the chair, I think first, I guess there's a couple of things, especially on the LRT corridor. We are introducing bicycle parking requirements. Those requirements are different from, let's say, the commercial mixed-use zone, only because we do want to encourage more of the bicycle parking along that LRT. However, the parking requirements are more or less the same for the other commercial zones within the urban area. So
I guess to add to it a little bit, but my concern with that is that I guess ideally we're going to get higher density development along the LRT corridor, which is going to impact the amount of parking value is going to go up. And yet we've identified that some of the sites are smaller. So I see it, it's hard to get the high density and achieve the parking on what we've identified as small sites. So just putting that out there.
So,
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Going to move on to my next question, but if you want to.
so through the chair, what we've done is actually also introduce in our, so for example, our retail use, anything under 450 square meters will require no parking spots. That's actually that's one of the, introducing that from our Hampton zoning bylaw 6593, which also has that requirement. And that's to recognize the fact that there may be parcels with small retail stores, pop shops, and small clothing shops that may not require as much parking. And this is especially applicable for LRT because we do have a lot of smaller stores along that stretch.
That's good to know. Can I circle back to Jason's comments about the additional height locations? Because my understanding from the OPA was that we were limited at 6 or 8 with the sun study shadow across the city, other than the very specific downtown area where there was additional heights. So I'm curious if there are other nodes on the LRT corridors that have been identified for additional development.
Here, I'll let Joanne provide some specifics, but yeah, I was referring specifically in the downtown core, where the LRT corridor goes through the downtown. We have higher permissions in the downtown core. And I'll let Joanne talk into some of the other, how we're looking at some of the other nodes.
Through you, Madam Chair. Mostly along the corridor, it will be anywhere from 6 to 8. Are there larger sites? Absolutely, there are larger sites. But for the purposes of the interim control bylaw, which expires in October, the first focus is along the LRT corridor as it relates to the urban handling commercial plan permissions. I no doubt that we will then go through a second phase and looking at some other sites where there will definitely be higher densities. There are some key sites that are very large, not too many, but I think they're very much like the City Motor Hotel, which went through a lot of work and had fabulous design and quite high density. And I just want to go on this issue about density. One of the things that we're trying to get away from in the zoning bylaw is using an artificial number of density. So the zoning bylaw now focuses, even in the downtown, on the built form. And through that built form, the number of parking spots, the size of the units, those two will have a relationship. Do we care necessarily if there are 3 apartments at, 3,300 square feet, or if somebody sees a market where there are more bachelors with a couple of 3s? We don't prescribe the number of units per site. I'll give you a little bit of an example. So if you were to do the number of units per hectare at the corner of Aberdeen and Dundurn, that building, if you did a straight calculation based on how big the lot area is and how many units, it's in the 400s. So that's why we didn't really want to get to that. We want to provide flexibility for the market to dictate how many units they need. Because as we know, unit sizes, depending on where you are, change, and most people focus on, well, what does the building look like? What are the amenities it has? So that's why we don't prescribe a density. We just use a height cap. That's the whole premise behind the zoning bylaw. When we talk about flexibility, that's one of the things that we're looking at.
Okay, no, that's great. Because I do think that, as you've identified, there's areas in the site where additional height would be a good idea, I think, and much desired, especially with parking requirements. It's really hard to build, obviously, a 6-story building without underground parking. The economics are tough. I had a question about, in one of the talk zones, I think it is, there's a 50-50 split between allowed commercial and residential. So only half the building was allowed to be residential. And that seems problematic to me, building a 6 or 8-story building and having 3 stories of commercial and 3 stories of residential. So I'm wondering if there's any consideration in, or I guess what the reasoning behind that restriction is.
Through you, Madam Chair, right now, Talk 2 applies to one site and one site alone out in the West End. And the intent there was to maintain the commercial. And as you know, I'm sure Tim has
explained through Top 1 and through the other mixed-use median, we don't have any prescriptions vis-a-vis how much residential, how much commercial, or thereabouts. But for that particular zone, we wanted to ensure that we retain the local commercial use because it supports a very viable neighborhood in the West End. We didn't want to lose that to residential, hence why we restricted that reflection. Remember, it's not only retail, it could be an office, so it is workable.
Yep, that'll do me for now. Thank you.
So thank you for this presentation. I think everybody will appreciate that we're thrilled to see it come to this point. Through you, Madam Chair, I have a number of questions. The first and probably the biggest one would be that, as you know, through the growth plan, we now have in theory some new very high intensification targets. 60% intensification, 80 people or jobs per hectare. Has there been an analysis done? Because, you know, I think in a lot of people's mind in the industry, the LRT corridor is a prime place to allow for that. Everything about transit-oriented design puts people in proximity to higher order transit. So has there been an analysis done of where we would be at with the zones that you're proposing relative to those numbers that the province is now going to impose on us?
Through you, Madam Chair, the short answer is no. Intensification is measured across the entire building area. So as you know, with zoning, it's a theoretical model. We will be doing some work to determine if we went to full build-out, and build-out is a very different thing than dealing with the forecast about what potentially could go there over the long term. But no, we haven't gotten to that stage. And that is more a growth management related project because that impacts far more than just the LRT. And it's quite a bit of an extensive project that we would do as part of our future growth management system.
So through you, Chair, while I can appreciate that, as I mentioned, I think this is a great opportunity to allow for some of the intensification. I think that there's a lot of people in this room and outside the public who are concerned that intensification will land in stable neighborhoods, things of that nature where it's predominantly low density residential, and preliminary analysis done with those numbers would suggest that any new subdivision would result in 10% only of it being single-family homes, the rest being high-rise in any new development to hit those targets. So, in my mind, losing potential intensification along an LRT corridor really hinders the rest of the city. So I would strongly urge that some analysis be done on that before we look at limiting an entire corridor, with the exception of some potential locations, to a 6 to 8 story height, where maybe 10 stories with ground floor commercial. If I understand correctly, this is one of my questions, in that TO3 zone, there would be no provision allowed for ground floor commercial with residential above in a redevelopment situation, is that correct?
So the chair, that is correct. So the permitted uses would be local dwelling, residential care facility, retirement home uses existing on the date of the passing of this bylaw.
So through you, Chair, is there a map that shows where these are that we would be able to analyze this better ourselves?
Through the chair, it isn't actually available. It is on the city's website for wards 1 to 4. And it was also available at the session open house as well.
Through the Chair, if I could formally get a copy of that, I think it would be resolved to really look at that in depth. I guess my last comment really was it's sort of, they all fall together, but it was about land assembly and pre-zoning. I mean, I guess I would hope that there would have been more flexibility along the entire corridor. I think that if you look at other locations where there's been higher order transit, there is land assembly done, there is rejigging of properties to allow for creative design and those types of things. So I understand through this process that they would then go through another rezoning that would be site-specific to them. Is that correct?
To the chair, no, I mean, you just go through a land assembly process and then work around the commercial zones. So, I mean,
My point is this, one of the things that the development industry had said was that a node process, taking away some of the concerns, NIMBYism, all of those things would help generate the economic uplift along this corridor that we're all looking for. And to be quite frank, I don't see it happening. If everything's limited to 6-day FBA to allow for their project, I guess that's just a statement for consideration. Thank you.
Lisa, did you wish to comment on that?
So through the chair, just say that is a comment we've heard. I can tell you sort of the lens we're looking at through the zoning is trying to look at what is feasible given the parcel fabric. We're also taking, Joanne mentioned where there are some key opportunity sites. We will be going back and taking a closer look at those sites where there is a bit more depth that may be able to handle more height, that may have opportunities for some assembly with adjacent properties that would handle more height. We're actually working with a consultant who's specifically looking at some of those sites and taking sort of a pro forma approach to what would be feasible on those sites in terms of application of good design practice, transition to adjacent uses, but also what would be feasible given the state of the market, making sure that we have all those sorts of things. What we didn't want to do was come out with sort of an aspirational zoning that looked good on paper but was actually not feasible to implement in the real world. So we're sort of trying to take that developer lens on especially some of the key signature sites. So as Joanne said, we will likely be coming back and looking at some of those ones in more detail. The reality of some areas on the corridor is that parcels are narrow and don't have a lot of assembly opportunity, but there are some spots where we think we'll be able to get additional density.
This isn't the only opportunity. This has to go through the continuing process, and then it'll come to the planning committee. It's a drawn out, still has a number of stages to go through. The Tim was raised and asked if there is a draft mapping that shows the different zonings that are being presented in the public presentations. Can they be sent to the committee members?
Through to the chair, I can certainly make that arrangement.
Through, like if we have it as a PDF document or whatever, that might be beneficial. Then everybody can have a look. Thank you. And I have, sorry, please. No, you didn't. Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks. I missed the first parts of the presentation, but thank you for that. You're not as quick as you used to be. I gotta wait for the buzz now. Sorry for that. I missed the first parts of the presentation. This is citywide, right? Transit-oriented zones, corridors is citywide. So we're not talking about, we're having an LRT discussion here, but we're talking citywide.
So through the chair, so it's being brought up in two phases. So the first phase is for generally wards 1 to 4 in the LRT corridor. And then we'll come back in the fall and initiate the second phase, which will be the rest of the city. But yes, the idea of the commercial mixed-use zoning is a citywide zoning standard. And then there's a subset of that is the transit-oriented corridor zoning, which is specific to the LRT corridor.
So, but ultimately, transit-oriented would also be allowed in other places where we have significant transit operations that are functioning that way. It's not all high-order transit, but it's transit-oriented.
Yes, through the chair, absolutely. So we are taking account the other sort of major transit corridors that have standards based on being supported with transit on those corridors.
And then second to that, I mean, in terms of, it would be great to have a map because it's not just front of the street, it's a corridor, it's a wide swath through our city, not necessarily just fronting on King Street, it's much beyond that, right? Correct on that? Just fronting on King Street.
So through the chair, it varies a bit, but basically the exercise being undertaken is for all the commercial mixed-use areas across the city. So it includes all the plazas, the big box centers, the smaller scale retail. So it varies in terms of the size of area that we cover. The transitory or the TOC zone, the TOC zone, being presented here would be what would apply on the King Street corridor. That's in response to the intrusion control bylaw that the city adopted last October, was to come up with some zoning that would be specific to that LRT corridor fronting onto King.
Okay, that's fair enough, but would ultimately also lend itself towards Ken Street, Park Street down the road. In terms of, we're talking about density numbers. We're not just talking about density numbers on King Street. We're talking about density numbers overall.
Yes, through the chair. So the zoning will look at appropriate densities and uses along all commercial corridors, and would include where those commercial corridors align with other transit corridors in the LES network, would have standards as well that provide appropriate densities and appropriate orientations to building that support transit.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Seeing no further questions, had some great dialogue there and information put out. I'm going to ask now for a motion to receive the presentation, and thank you, Timothy, it was excellent. Moved by Councillor Partridge, second by Mayor Eisenberger, all in favor? Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Tim. Moving on to discussion, item 8.1 is improvements to the zoning review and development planning applications, and I'm not sure who's going to present this today. And 8.1. Mr. Vanderwood?
Through the chair, I'll open the discussion. The report is in your folder there, and through some work through the Development Liaison Committee Group and the HBA, we've identified that we could use some help in the zoning verification review section of the department. We are at this time falling behind the required timelines for zoning reviews for planning applications as well. So we'll be hosting a 18-month pilot project and picking up 2 staff. They'll be covered by gapping funds. There's no effect on levy whatsoever. And then that time period we'll be reevaluating our process at the time to see how quick it's made to the process. We will also be adding, as per the request from the HBA, a zoning review at the formal consultation stage of the application process. So that'll give an earlier heads up to the applicants and the developers where they are in the zoning strata for their own comments and changes at that time.
Okay, I didn't see who went first. We went out together. You can wrestle it out later. Councillor Partridge.
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Ed. Ed, just a quick question. For the zoning verification, could you explain that process and include in your answer whether or not it is revenue generating?
I know portions of it. The zoning verification process is what the zoning examiners do when there's an application that comes into the city for a site plan or rezoning or a minor variance or subdivision. It goes through the zoning verification process, confirm that the applicant has designed the building or property that meets the zoning bylaw. And they go through all the setbacks and the heights and the variances that may be required in the process. There's a fee also for zoning verifications that cover those who wish to verify on their own property what their own zoning is, whether it meets the zoning bylaw requirements. And that fee helps cover some of those costs.
All right, thank you. And you covered off both streams that I was talking about, because I do know some folks advisedly do a zoning verification if they're purchasing a particular property or that type of thing. And I was pretty sure that there was a fee charged for that. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Mr. Mayor. Yes, it's in the works.
Is it a big job or?
Yeah, the facilities are looking at it.
You know, it's the dark side. Yeah, I guess I might have to do it. Good people on the other side. This is an inside thing. We have an ongoing problem with just this microphone. Yeah. This is great. I appreciate the additional staffing to improve and speed things along. But one of the questions we've been asking for quite some time is a running list of changes that we've made so that we can kind of keep that front and center on our agenda
So through the chair, at the last GIC, we did present in presentation form. I went through the, I believe it was 22 items that had been done in what I would consider sort of the first year of open for business under the Burlington Council, and I started the clock ticking on the first years when Bill was hired and when this committee was established. What we have not done yet, but what we can do with that direction is take that presentation, which exists as a PowerPoint, and turn that into maybe an information report that we can present to council that documents what those 22 are, so that you can use that and keep track of what we reported on for the first year. And this will be one of the earlier items that we'll be reporting on next year, is hopefully another 22 items or so that we'll be doing in year 2.
So I guess what I'm asking for, though, and I appreciate that, I think that's helpful, is just a sheet on our agenda each and every time of a listing of things that we have changed over the past year, and then add all of the ones that we're making, like today's additional staffing, which is going to be improved for sure. Add that on the list so it stays on the agenda. We can all look at it week to week, month to month, and then obviously at the end of the year report to council wherever we need to go in greater detail. But that all of us to be aware of, so that we can at least have a sense that those changes have happened and will continue to happen, and we're all Can we make that happen?
Yes, through the show we can do that, and aim to have something attached to your next agenda.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
If I recall correctly, we started first year, the first meeting almost, I think it was 65 or 68 items on the list. So we've come a very, very long way in the wrong direction. Thank you.
Yeah, just in addition to maybe as the mayor's asking for the same thing, Jason, but through you, Madam Chairman, I would also like to see, unless that's part of this report, staff enhancements that have been made over the last 5 years in planning and economic development. I know that we've seen a boom. We know Hamilton's on resurgence. I know we're consistently getting $1 billion in building permits, but 3 years ago we added a couple extra staff for lot grading. And 2 years ago you were Jason with 7 more staff in planning and economic development. There's also enhancement last year, but we're still getting the feedback that things are taking longer than people expect they're going to take. So I'm not sure whether that's what they're asked for, but if not, I'd like to see that added too. Over the last 5 years, what staff enhancements have we made in planning and economic development in order to respond to the surge in activity that we're seeing in Hamilton? And then beside that, a good benchmark would be the building permits issued also. So you can see the staff growth with the building permit growth. And so first of all, can we also get that for the next meeting, Jason?
Through the chair, we should go to that for the next meeting as well. So you're looking sort of for the past 5 years, what some of the enhancements, what the
staff
enhancements.
Yes, we can to the surge in growth. And through you, do you think you're going to be on track for $1 billion again this year?
Through the chair, according to the last monthly report, I think we are the second highest year to date at this point right now.
Okay, is that still about 60-65% residential?
I don't know the exact figure, but it is high. Yes, it is.
Okay, and we're still seeing lots of institutional work. I think the hospital work has pretty much stopped or slowed down. Is still a big chunk institutional, or is it mostly private sector?
There has been, but it's mostly private sector.
That's good news. Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
And then the school board gets approval, so we're having a whole lot of work coming in the next couple of years with the school fees, so
They don't
we
pay
should be
taxes.
ready for that going forward. Sorry?
They don't pay taxes.
No, but they get building permits and pay charges, etc. So anyways, I'm going to
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have some questions, and maybe I better, I'll maybe take it offline to discuss in more detail with staff, but I understand that if you get an application for a 30-story condo building vis-a-vis someone who wants to put up a drive shed on his farm, can you give me some idea of the time involved in doing a review of the zoning? From a layman's perspective, and without knowing anything about the process, you sit down and you look at it, surely in 3 to 4 hours, unless it's very complex, you should be able to verify the zoning and the use.
So let me just clarify, your question is zoning verification.
Well,
Not sitting down looking at a plan, but zoning verification. Is that correct?
I'll use the language in the report. Average time frame, business days, for zoning review of planning applications. Like how?
That's not zoning verification.
All right. I'll get my head around that. Me bad. I should maybe ask that before the meeting. I'm a little bit confused. The council direction is not necessary, even though you're hiring 2 new people at $180,000. And then I heard a reference, I think, from Ed, something about that gapping fund or something. Can you tell me what that is?
So through the chair, because this is being done as contract staff on a pilot basis, no council direction is needed. If after the pilot, the suggestion is to make those 2 staff permanent, then we would certainly need to get council approval of that. They would have to come forward at budget time as an enhancement. So these would be contract positions that that would expire at the end of the pilot period unless council voted to make them permanent as part of the budget process.
So does the staff have the right to go out and hire a contract outside of council approval? Is that what I'm hearing? Sorry, I'm not trying to be difficult here. I'm just asking.
On that point?
Well, hang on, Councillor. I recognize this is Mr. Doran trying to answer it, clarify, and I'll come back to you. Go ahead.
Yeah, so through the chair, council does have a complement policy that dictates what sort of authority we have at the staff level to bring in short-term contract positions if the funding is available. If a funding source is being sought, if we were seeking to have this pilot program funded through the tax stabilization reserve or some sort of reserve, we'd have to come to council and get approval to use that funding source. If they were going to be permanent staff, we would have to come to council and get council to approve that. What we're suggesting here is this would be contract staff because what gapping refers to is that we have an approved complement within the planning division. As there are vacancies, it means there are savings in terms of salaries for those vacancies. And we have enough of that room to be able to cover the costs of these additional resources.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That's helpful. I appreciate that very much. The last question I have, and then I understood that in application processes, that they are theoretically or ideally or have to be, take your pick, revenue neutral. In other words, that when an applicant comes in, the application fee somehow reflects the amount of work that goes into that. But at the end of the day, the intent is to have that application process funded by the applicants and not general levy. Am I correct about that?
Through the chair, that's correct. So the fees are based on a fee review that was done that looks at how much time it takes to do certain tasks and assigns that a fee or cost. So generally it is straight cost recovery. Certainly it's not allowed to make a profit on it. There were some circumstances where council approved some levy contribution in order to reduce the fee burden. So, for example, applications in the agricultural area is not 100% cost recovery. There is some levy that's provided in order to reduce those fees in the agricultural area and some of the rural areas.
All right. So, in an attempt to be helpful, Madam Chair, in my role, I get an awful lot of complaints from members and non-members who run businesses that says that it takes forever and ever and too long to process applications. I'm not going to take the committee's time to share some of those horror stories I've heard. And if they're supposed to be revenue neutral, then we should be able to provide in a very timely manner whatever is required in terms of decisions and in terms of approvals or whatever. And it's not contingent on staff being overworked. If it's going to be revenue neutral, go out and hire people. That's what I heard to the question I asked before, is, okay, we have to be neutral, so if you have a whole bunch more applications by the applicant. So that's my point. For the benefit of the committee and for the decision makers in this community, we have to do a better, quicker, faster, more efficient job at evaluating and approving or amending applications. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, I know I have Suzanne Hamel on the speakers list, but Councilor Green, we wanted to put
Just a point, yeah. The statement was made about staff hiring people. It should be noted that as council, the only direction we give is to the general manager of the corporation, City of Hamilton. And that once budgets are approved, staff are empowered to go about their business day to day. So we're not in the business around council of handpicking who's going to be doing what planning and micromanaging the decisions day to day from our staff as it relates to HR. That our job as council is to direct the city manager and the manager SMT accordingly. So I just wanted to go on the record and state that before we start, having those conversations with the staff that are here present. They do a great job, and then there's a lot of complexity around it. So on that, Madam Chair, I do appreciate the frustration. We're all frustrated. Around the council table, when we approve 16 new planners, we want to see them in ASAP. But as everybody also knows, particularly those that are in business, that when you start at the top, work your way down, particularly when you have a culture that tries to hire within, one goes up and now everybody bumps. And it's having traveled to some of the planning conferences and so on and so forth, it's a very competitive environment for that field. And certainly we want to make sure we get the right people, the best staff, and have them in. So I wanted to acknowledge that because I think that Mr. Thorne is doing a good job in terms of backstopping those people. But certainly for us on council, at least I can speak for myself, I don't want to speak for my colleagues. I was very concerned when we approved a 16-person increase and then came back the next year and said, where are they? Naively myself being new to council, having to begin to fully understand what that means in terms of backfilling those people. So I don't want it to think that it's not because we're not funding them, we are, and it's not because staff aren't doing their best to backfill those spaces. We'd love to see them in here, and we'd love to see those permits on the door and the checks cashed and everything rock and rolling. So I just want to make that comment. I appreciate the latitude and I appreciate the frustration on the table, but I also appreciate where staff's kind of squeezed. So thank you.
Thank you. Aaron, I'm sorry, Susan.
I'm just going to have a quick response because now I'm terribly confused.
Well, I don't, and that's why I didn't want to get into
No, but just one comment, Madam Chair. If that is correct, then why was there so much discussion about the hiring of a new part-time enforcement officer for $170,000 to shut down businesses in Glanbrook? Why did that then have to go to council?
It's outside the state the formula that's happened. So Suzanne, I'm now going to turn to you and I apologize. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to thank staff for addressing this issue. For background, and I think it's important, this is something that came up through a meeting that Duncan Builders had with senior staff. We've had a couple of meetings with both Chris Murray, Jason Thorne, Bill. But what I want to point out is that at the outset of the formal consultation process, this was originally part of it. And through staff, it became something that was removed from the process, and it was very helpful to our members, so we asked for it to be put back. And that is why this pilot project has come about. It's not really new, it's just the return of a good policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. I appreciate that because it does make things work much more efficiently. Councillor Ferguson.
And with the information report we received.
Thank you, sir. Been moved by Councillor Ferguson, second by Councillor Partridge. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, everyone. Now we're going to move into item 8.2 is business licensing bylaw. Initial public consultation, PED 16125. And this is the one that was referred for the May 5th meeting. We went on for quite a while. I have Marty Hayes is going to speak on this.
So, Madam Chair, this is just a quick update on the consultation process where we're collecting input on the business licensing bylaw rewrite. We had two public meetings, one on May 26th, one on June 1st. And basically staff explained the purpose of the licensing bylaw rewrite, collected general comments, recorded those comments, and they're going to be used as we get into the specific bylaw rewrite.
Can I have a point of order, please, Madam Chair? Does this somehow affect the taxi industry, Marty?
To Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, one of the current schedules being rewritten is the taxi category.
I'd like to be very confident.
So, Madam Chair, that was just a quick update on the two public meetings.
Okay. So with that, any questions, comments to it? Councillor Partridge. Motion to receive. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Partridge, second by Councillor Pursuta. All in favor? Carried. Do we still have quorum here? I think we do, right? 4? Yes, we do. Thank you. Okay, and I have now item 8.3 is, you've got it before you in yellow, is the Amanda Roadmap Update from the Manager, Amanda Review and Implementation Project. This is also deferred from the May 5th meeting. And Theo Ortez is going to, the Manager of Amanda Review, is going to give us an update. Welcome, Theo. This is good news. I hope.
Good afternoon. As requested and directed by this committee, I was asked to prepare and present a roadmap of the tasks and initiatives that are being completed in response to the Open for Business initiative for the Amanda implementation and plan and economic development. At the November 30th meeting, I did list some of those initiatives, and they're listed here again for your benefit. In your handouts, you will have the list of current and approved initiatives that are meant to improve the way Planning and Active provides these services to our customers and our businesses and constituents. And then the second sheet is other major initiatives that are being contemplated that have not yet been approved. So the one that you see on the screen right now are the current ones that Humanity is currently developing. In addition to these, maybe as a preface to it, there was a lot of work that was done in 2015. And just to recap that, we have included the development planning approvals for site plan applications and subdivisions are now on the Amanda system, as well as the growth management and development engineering development approvals group, which are phase one of their respective divisions. Earlier this year, we started on 4 simultaneous implementations. They are the phase 2 for the planning division, which will target or has targeted the committee of adjustment, official plan amendment, and zoning bylaw amendment applications. The growth management phase 2 one deals with initially the scope of work was for the construction services or the inspections, and to include these letter credits and city share. The latter 2 have been deferred because the scope and size of the construction inspections was very big, and to ensure that we met the objective of June implementation, we've downsized the scope. I am happy to report that we have 2 of the other initiatives are completed or about to be completed in the next few days. The agriculture and tourism seat and film applications, they're now on the Amanda system. And later on, or in your balance of your roadmap there, you'll see the online portion of that will also be enhanced to tie it on with the Amanda system. Economic development, and more specifically the real estate section. This will be going live the 28th, which is next week. And that deals with the Cash and Blue Parkland dedication review, which will now be, again, on the Amanda system. All of these implementations are integrated, and the left hand will know what the right hand's doing. And we've built a lot of checks and balances to ensure that we get timely responses and processes in place that make sure that we're not only transparent but accountable for the services we deliver. Equally important is the next set of implementations, which starts with the Amanda 7 upgrade. This is slated to start very shortly with respect to the Amanda 7 upgrade, and what is closely related to it is the Portal 2 and Project Docs. These are very exciting initiatives. The Amanda 7 will allow us to finally have a system that will allow us to have some online services available to the public. And that's listed in the Portal 2 initiative right here. So some of the services that we're targeting right now are subdivision applications and building permit applications as part of the first phase. Again, in your documents and the proposed ones on the phase 2, we will expand that to include other services that the planning currently provides. The Project Docs portion here deals with digital submissions. Again, closely ties with the portal or the online services. Applicants will now be able to submit digital drawings or applications with digital files. And concurrent to that, our staff will also have the tool now to do all the reviews, responses, and replies in a digital format. The rest of the other items listed for the balance of 2015 are more foundational work, infrastructure work that were necessary and vital to ensure that the primary projects are able to proceed. And I'm happy to announce that those works and those critical tasks have been completed.
That's it, Jim?
Okay, and I'll just briefly go over some of the proposals. I'll be very quick and brief on this part. For those of you who don't know, our call center is going through a new system. It's called the Lagan software. I'm pleased to know that Amanda will also be integrated into this, so that as we do get requests and inquiries or complaints, we'll get automatic connection to Amanda, and our staff will be able to respond in a more timely manner. For the MLE group, they will be moving off the Hansen system, and as a result, Amanda will be more heavily utilized, and the end result is that we'll have more consistent reporting, and we'll be able to compare apples to apples with respect to enforcement items in MLE. And we will have culture and tourism, as noted before. We will move off the fluid review and then integrate with the portal technology that we're doing now. And the more important, or at least I feel the most important one, is as part of expanding and truly making Amanda an enterprise system throughout the corporation, throughout the city, is the ability to have non-Amanda divisions and sections be able to participate and utilize the Amanda system. So right now we do have public works, public health, finance, fire prevention, and conservation authority being part of the workflow process, and they take ownership of that particular task. This is very important when you want to identify where are the roadblocks, where are the barriers, as these areas now will take responsibility for the work as opposed to the staff and planning active. And without going into greater detail, we do have the other phases and other services that will come on board starting in 2017 and 2018.
Thank you. I think Councillor Partridge, you have a question?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Everyone's good on it? Any questions, comments then? The only thing I'm going to ask you, and this is excellent news, we've been waiting a long time to hear this positive information going forward, and it's going to make a tremendous difference on how we do business in Hamilton and how the public is able to get things quicker. So appreciate that. I'm going to ask, so the presentation you have up there, is it possible to send that all to us digitally on our computers, because it's some of the information is cut off on all the slides. I think some of the wording is cut off at the very beginning, so we can all have it on our desktops. That would be great. I can do that right now. Wonderful. Thank you very, very much. Appreciate that. So with that, then, motion to receive presentation by Councillor Partridge, second by Councillor Pursuit. All in favor? Thank you, everyone. Is there any other any motions or information around the table today? Seeing none, no other business. We have no outstanding businesses to deal with.
Move to adjourn.
Move to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Green, second by Councillor Partridge. All in favor?